My friend, the 2026 Philadelphia Eagles free agency is kicking off with a massive gut punch. An edge rusher who was a key piece of their Super Bowl championship just signed with an NFC rival on a monstrous 4-year, $120 million contract. Howie Roseman, the architect of the greatest roster in the NFL, is going to be burning the midnight oil tonight. Who is this player? Why did the Eagles walk away? And what does this mean for Philadelphia's defense in 2026? Stay right here because we're breaking all of it down right now. I'm going to tell you the full story behind this departure, what the numbers actually reveal, and what the Eagles need to do now to avoid leaving a massive hole on their defensive line. But first, if you're a die-hard Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now because this free agency is going to be wild and you don't want to miss a single update. As the NFL dove headfirst into the free agency negotiating period, the Eagles front office found themselves facing a tough call. One of the most coveted pass rushers on the market was someone they had brought in through a surgical move at the trade deadline last season. A guy who came over from the Miami Dolphins, fit seamlessly into the defense, and helped Philadelphia hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And now, according to ESPN insider Adam Schefter, that same player just agreed to a deal with an NFC rival. 4 years, $120 million, $80 million guaranteed. Howie Roseman left that money on the table. That name is Jaelan Phillips, and he's headed to the Carolina Panthers. For anyone who follows the Eagles closely, this one stings. Phillips came in, locked down his role in the defensive rotation, and was exactly the type of piece that makes the difference in a Super Bowl run. But now the game has changed, and Philadelphia needs to find answers. Let's talk about the numbers, because they tell a fascinating story. The contract projection site Spotrac had pegged Phillips's market value at just 3 years and $52 million. The Panthers threw more than double that on the table, 4 years and $120 million with $80 million guaranteed. That's $30 million per year for an edge rusher who, as talented as he is, carries an injury history that any NFL executive has to take seriously. And that's the big point right here. Before the 2025 season, Phillips had missed 19 games over the previous 2 years, a torn ACL in 2023 and a torn Achilles tendon in 2024. 2 of the most serious injuries in the sport, in back-to-back years. PFF does acknowledge the talent. He posted the 7th highest pass rush win rate among qualifying edge defenders at 19.1% and ranked in the 85th percentile in PFF pass rush grade on true pass sets. The numbers are real, but so is the risk. Former NFL scouting director Greg Gabriel was blunt about it. He said Phillips's sack production has been average since his rookie year, and that from the start he was essentially a rental, a player brought in with no long-term commitment intended. That's a harsh take, but it helps explain why Howie Roseman may have simply refused to get into a bidding war over him. Now let me show you what Phillips's departure actually means inside the Eagles' defensive scheme, because this goes way beyond the contract numbers. Philadelphia's defense in the second half of last season was built around constant pressure on the opposing quarterback. Phillips operated as the agent of chaos on the blind side, the guy who forced quarterbacks into making decisions too fast, creating space for the rest of the line to work. When you remove that element from the equation, the entire pass rush dynamic shifts. The defensive coordinator is going to have to redraw parts of his playbook. The most urgent tactical question for the Eagles right now is, who absorbs the role Phillips played as the priority pass rusher off the weak side? On an elite defense, every player has a specific function within the rotation. It's not just about finding someone with similar stats. It's about finding an athlete who can generate the same kind of unstructured pressure that forced opposing quarterbacks out of the pocket before they were ready. That specific player profile isn't sitting on every street corner in free agency, and that's exactly why Howie Roseman's decisions over the next few weeks are going to be so critical. And there's another tactical detail that can't be overlooked. The depth of the Eagles' defensive line is going to be put to the test right from the start of 2026. Without Phillips in the rotation, the snap count distributed among the remaining edge rushers is going to increase significantly. Over a long 17-week season plus playoffs, that's a real wear and tear factor. Teams that make Super Bowl runs typically have plenty of depth at that position, and right now the Eagles need to make sure their rotation isn't exposed when it matters most. Now, the financial side of this decision deserves a closer look. By refusing to pay Phillips $30 million per year, the Eagles potentially free up significant salary cap space to maneuver on other fronts in this free agency period. Think about it. $30 million annually is the kind of commitment that ties up roster flexibility for 4 years. With that capital available, Howie Roseman can spread the same value across 2 or 3 lower-cost, high-impact players, a second-tier edge rusher, a linebacker, or even reinforcing another position of need. Salary cap math in the NFL rewards teams that think in systems, not individual names, and historically, the Eagles are exactly that kind of franchise. This situation gets even more complicated when you look at the franchise's recent history with edge rushers, because the pattern is concerning. Before the 2024 season, the Eagles signed Bryce Huff to a 3-year, $51.1 million deal. The plan didn't pan out. The guy who led the team in sacks and went to the Super Bowl was Josh Sweat, who had received a modest 1-year, $10 million extension. And in the end, Sweat walked in free agency to the Arizona Cardinals on a 4-year, $76.4 million contract. The hero turned out to be the guy they undervalued, and the big investment didn't return what was expected. That's a pattern, my friend. And now the Eagles find themselves in the same cycle again, losing an important pass rusher to the open market while having to rebuild that position from scratch. But here's what this really means for Howie Roseman. He now has financial flexibility to make moves. In an inflated edge rusher market like the one we're seeing in 2026, refusing to pay $120 million for a high-risk player could end up being the smartest decision in the room, especially if he can find an efficient replacement at a lower cost, whether that's through free agency, the draft, or a trade nobody sees coming. It's also worth noting the NFC context here. PFF had previously pointed to the Washington Commanders as the most likely landing spot for Phillips, largely because Washington's defense was one of the worst in the league in 2025, with a 53.7 rating and a 27th place ranking. With Von Miller and Jacob Martin also potentially hitting free agency, the Commanders have a pressing need. But the Panthers were more aggressive. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler also reported that Carolina could still add a top linebacker and a slot corner, which tells you this team is seriously building a roster. That creates a more dangerous NFC rival, and the Eagles need to respond. The reality is that the 2026 free agency period is just getting started, and Howie Roseman rarely sits on his hands when he sees a clear roster need. Phillips' departure opens a real hole in the Eagles' edge rusher rotation, but it also frees up capital to be invested strategically. Is a surprise signing coming in the next few hours? A blockbuster trade nobody saw coming? Or will the Eagles lean on the draft to solve this problem on the defensive line? With Jaelan Phillips heading to the Panthers on $120 million, a history showing a repeated pattern with edge rushers in Philadelphia, and a free agency that still has plenty more chapters to write. What do you think is Howie Roseman's best move right now? Sign an available edge rusher on the market, bet on the draft, or go for a trade? Drop your opinion in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later with the latest Eagles news. Fly, Eagles, fly!